On that page 2, at the corner, there was that attack in Kilifi, and an Italian was abducted in a market attack. There's a picture of her. Police officers in Kilifi and Tana River counties yesterday scrambled to rescue an Italian student volunteer who was kidnapped during a gun attack in Kenya-Mozambique. Well, just underneath that, we have a story on Joey, and he says, "I'm not a woman eater," in reference to what was actually put out there by the judge who actually gave a ruling over their bail and bond, and that's Justice James Wakiaga. To be specific, Joseph Kuria Irungu alias Joey, who was charged alongside TV journalist Jackie Maribe with the murder of Monica Kimani, wants the judge hearing the case to recuse himself. He says he will not get a fair trial because Justice Wakiaga, who called him a woman eater, has already formed a negative opinion of him. Well, that story continues to develop, and we keep following on the same. And on the back page of your paper, something that you need to be worried about or concerned about when it comes to health matters: nurses, clinical officers threaten to down tools. Well, this has been a very sad state of affairs, as we've seen better part of this year and last year, where they downed their tools, and they all are saying this time around they'll do the same thing. Public hospitals could be thrown into turmoil next month after nurses and clinical officers threaten to go on strike to push for better working conditions and higher pay. Now, on the left of that paper, we see the ministry on the spot over 2 billion shillings. We're talking about the National Assembly's Public Accounts Committee that has ordered the Ministry of Education to submit a report on how 2 billion for infrastructure programs was disbursed to 89 secondary schools across the country. Well, that's on the education front. Now to the headline on the Standard. New formula for sharing slots in top schools. Well, Form 1 selection is underway as we speak. All candidates with 400 marks and above are admitted to national schools automatically, while the remaining 17,000 slots are actually allocated based on candidature strength across sub-counties. Well, this will be interesting to follow up on now that the president actually promised himself that every candidate that's sat for the KCPE will actually get a slot in high school. Well, 103 is the current number of national schools in Kenya, 29,712 the number of available places, 12,273 number of candidates who scored 401 marks and above. It will be interesting to see how those slots will be shared out to the candidates that sat for the KCPE 2017, or rather 2018. Now, at the corner, there is a sad story about a candidate who died during initiation in Muranga. As you know, most cultures actually go into the initiation period during the November-December holiday, and Juliana Mbatha wanted to be initiated into manhood according to tradition, but it was a journey that ended in tragedy. Now to the Business Daily. As you know, we are in the markets today right here on AM Live, so a lot coming from the Business Daily this morning. There is a picture there and the caption, "Time to Account." We have the Energy Secretary Charles Keter, Principal Secretary Joseph Njoroge, and Energy Regulatory Commission Director General Pavel Omeeke when they appeared before the Senate Committee on Energy to answer questions on the Lake Turkana wind power project yesterday. Underneath that, we have UBA Bank boss who departs under cloud of bad loans. Now, Isaac Muige, the CEO of UBA Kenya, left the bank after 4 years on the job, and the local subsidiary of Lagos-based lender UBA PLC announced the same yesterday. It was not immediately clear what led to his sudden departure, but the bank said that regional UBA executive had already been appointed to replace him in an acting capacity. Well, to matters, taxes, KRA on that headline just at the bottom of the Business Daily. KRA detains Jameson whiskey imports in 700 million tax row. Now, the Kenya Revenue Authority has detained a large consignment of a popular Jameson on Irish whiskey following disagreement with its importers over valuation of the product. Well, something to look forward to also is that revealed Kenya's most expensive highways. Well, construction has come to reveal that there is a report that has shocked those that are in the industry, which shows some roads have been built at a cost of 2.7 billion per kilometer. Well, interesting times ahead, especially now that many have to come and account for the monies and how they have used them. And on the ticker, we have sugar prices fell by 25% in October. Sugar prices dropped by that percentage in October, helped by increased local production and the easing of a crackdown against illicit goods. Now, this, of course, is of interest, as you know, that the sugar matter has been top of mind throughout this year. And at the bottom of the ticker, more budget cuts loom in 2019 as revenues falter. Now, the Treasury could be forced into steeper spending cuts than previously anticipated at the beginning of the year if it is to achieve the projected fiscal deficit of 5.7% by next June due to flagging revenue performance. Well, get a copy of your Business Daily to get more details on those stories and others within the paper. And now the last one we can look at will be the Star this morning. Why Uhuru is upset with some ministers. Well, frequent public rebuke of cabinet secretaries pointed to impending reshuffle. Will this be happening? Well, it's still a game of wait and see. And of course, a picture on the front page as police mount search for 23-year-old Italian NGO worker who was taken in Kilifi, and more details of other stories in that paper. Well, time to look at those stories that made headlines yesterday and will be developing into today. Shootings and abduction in Kilifi. Italian woman is taken. Taming borders. Fred Matiang'i says it is here to stay. And Cameroon kidnapped students are freed. Now, an Italian woman was kidnapped by gunmen during an attack that occurred at Chakama Trading Center in Magarini constituency Tuesday evening. A gang of armed men stormed the shopping center and started shooting indiscriminately before abducting the 23-year-old Italian lady identified as Silvia Romano, a volunteer with Africa Milele Onlus, a non-governmental organization operating in the area. The gunmen injured 5 people who are still nursing serious gunshot wounds at the Malindi Sub-County Hospital, with one of them reportedly in critical condition.
Tension is high in Chakama Trading Center in Kilifi County following an attack by unknown gunmen Tuesday evening at around 7:30 p.m. The locals say the gunmen armed with AK-47 rifles stormed the shopping center and immediately started shooting randomly. They claim that one of the gunmen ordered some of the residents who had assembled in front of this shop to lie down, but some decided to scamper for their safety, and that's when the attackers executed their operation.
Walipokutukuta hapo, mimi niko nje, huo mzungu uko ndani, wakauliza huyu mgeni uko wapi? Mgeni uko wapi? Residents say the attackers' purpose appeared to be to abduct the Italian woman Silvia Romano, who works as a volunteer with Africa Milele Onlus. Romano had rented this apartment where she was staying with her 2 colleagues, but she was alone with the locals at the time she was abducted. Residents say the gunmen demanded money from the lady before fleeing with her and disappeared into the dead of night.
Walikuwa wamevaa nguo nyeusi. Mimi niliona walikuwa kama wamejaa barabara. Sasa mimi ule mzungu akaniona, akaniita kwa jina, akaniita Kimandi. Oh June, kamwambia fine. Akaniambia tomorrow is come here home. Mimi nikamwambia okay. Wakati naongea naye wajamaa wakaja.
She's still missing because where she used to operate is just that building just behind me here. And in fact, we are now those officers who came were the first responders at the scene. Now we have just follow up now to get finer details.
Sisi shida ambayo tumeiona hapa ni kwamba kwanza kabisa imechukua muda sana polisi kufika, na hasa inaonekana kwamba hata walipopata zile tetesi ya kwamba wale waliofanya kitengo hiki wako karibu, wamechukua muda kuweza kuchukua hatua hiyo.
5 people were injured and are currently nursing serious injuries at the Malindi Sub-County Hospital. Doctors say that one of the victims, Samini Garama, is in critical condition after he was shot in the neck. 10-year-old Mohammed Kalume, a standard 5 pupil, sustained a gunshot in his left eye but is in stable condition. His mother says that she had sent her son to the shop to buy foodstuff for dinner.
Nasikia uchungu sana mimi. Nasikitika tangu usiku basi nalia mpaka sasa. Nalia. Sijui mtoto wangu atakuwa vipi.
Police surveillance both in the air and on land with a contingent of armed officers from various security agencies including the Kenya Defence Forces, Kenya Wildlife Service and the Administration Police are in a joint operation to flush out the attackers. Police are also patrolling Chakama and its environs to calm the tension after some of the residents attacked and injured 3 people in what is said to be retaliatory attacks.
Inawezekana kuongezwe kituo kingine cha polisi maeneo haya karibu hapa, kwa sababu sofa sahihi tuna kituo chetu cha polisi kilicho karibu na sisi kiko Langobaya na ni mwendo wa kama 25 kilometers.
Ni lazima serikali ya Italy itagutuka. Ndiposa mimi naweka mwito wa serikali yetu kuu ifanye mbinu zozote yule dada aweze kupatikana na aweze kupatikana akiwa hai.
Security personnel in the region are coordinating in the search and rescue mission of the Italian lady who was abducted by the gunmen and intensifying the manhunt on the suspects who fled across River Sebaki into the vast forest in Galana Kulalu. Kevin Mutai, NTV in Kilifi County.
Now, the National Assembly Security and Administration Committee has summoned Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i to appear next week, accusing Matiang'i of belittling its work. This is after Matiang'i failed to appear before them to answer questions regarding the deplorable state at the country's prisons, besides other security challenges facing the country.
Members of the National Assembly Security Committee were angered by the move by Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i to snub the committee for the second time. The members resolved to summon the CS, accusing him of treating them with contempt.
Our own CS cannot fail to come and address these important issues when he is all over addressing matters of education, transport and other sectors over which there are other CSS. When we call you as a cabinet secretary to Parliament, please come. We are not calling you because we are idle. We are calling you because we have serious issues to undertake.
The committee had invited the CS and his principal secretary to answer questions regarding dilapidated conditions at the country's prisons and pending bills.
The prisons are in dilapidated conditions not because of lack of money, but the money meant to improve the prisons are diverted.
It is the issue of pending bills and non-payment to suppliers who are supplying food to our prison.
Legislators say cabinet secretaries who snub invitations to appear before committees leave a lot of unanswered questions. They now want Parliament to take action.
He has never come to the committee to answer questions. Over 60 questions, Mr. Speaker, he has not come to answer even one question.
Mr. Speaker, I think you should allow us so that we impeach one CS as a lesson, so that these CSs will take Parliament seriously. Mr. Speaker, Matiang'i is not a super minister, Mr. Speaker.
The Secretary is finding the committee maybe not sufficient for his appearance. Then the House will obviously have him dragged into this place. But it is not fair that the Cabinet Secretary can keep over 60 questions unanswered.
Matiang'i is required to appear in person before the committee next week. Vincent Odur, NTV.
The next business be called.
On to the roads now, and the government has formally gazetted the task force on motorcycle transport reforms that will create regulations and guidelines to be followed by border operators in a bid to streamline the sector. The launch of the task force was graced by Cabinet Secretaries Fred Matiang'i, Interior, and his transport counterpart James Macharia. Now, hundreds of miles away, border operators in Kabarnet, Baringo County protested what they termed as police harassment.
The 12-man task force gazetted by Cabinet Secretaries Fred Matiang'i and James Macharia is chaired by Julius Mathenge, who has 60 days to formulate and enforce rules that will govern border operators in the country. Other members of the task force include David Tiraina, who is the deputy chairperson, Martin Eshiwani, Njeri Waithaka, Nick Korir, Lucy Karume, Lydia Mambo, Michael Kimani, Kevin Mubadi, Kennedy Odhiambo Okongo, who is a representative from the Council of Governors, Thomas Ogutu and Thomas Sharia, who are the joint secretaries of the task force.
It's time that we lived like serious people, because we messed ourselves by all this, and we keep engaging in public relations. You know, let us say things that are politically correct, or we will not annoy these people. Some of the reasons why we are suffering the way we are suffering is because occasionally and sometimes we have allowed politics to rule our lives.
If you follow the law, there will be no issue with you. There will be no issue with NTSA, there will be no issue with the police service. But follow the law. And the law requires you to have a vehicle which is roadworthy. It requires you to have a vehicle which is properly insured.
The task force has been mandated to, among others, examine existing policy, institutional, legislative and administrative systems governing the public service motorcycle subsector, compile comprehensive data regarding the safety, reliability, cost and other matters of interest to consumers of public service motorcycle subsector services, recommend comprehensive reforms for the protection of consumers of public service motorcycle services, and develop a prioritized implementation matrix clearly stating the immediate, medium and long-term reforms governing consumers of public service motorcycle subsector.
And there is work we are doing in the justice sector right now about cleaning up police stations, what we are going to do with motor vehicles that we have arrested and so on. And I told the IG the other day, honestly speaking, this is work I would like to undertake even if I don't go for a Christmas break. Vehicles we have arrested, like this one's carrying contraband goods and so on, we are going to court, we apply for administrative forfeiture, we take them. We need these vehicles. Some of them we can share with county governments to use them to...
There are so far 40,000 cases of traffic offenders since the government revived the Michuki rules 11 days ago. As the task force on motorcycle transport reforms was being launched in Nairobi, a group of border operators in Kabarnet, Baringo County, protested against an operation being conducted by local law enforcers. The operators momentarily paralyzed transport by barricading roads and engaging the police in running battles. As the task force formally starts executing its mandate, border operators have been warned against flouting the existing laws, with the government insisting that it will not relent in its crackdown in order to ensure there is sanity in this particular sector. Seth Olale, NTV, the KICC, Nairobi.
Well, Kenya and Mozambique have signed a visa waiver framework that will make it easier for the citizens to interact and trade with greater ease. Now, President Uhuru Kenyatta announced this after a meeting with Mozambique President Filipe Nyusi, who is on a 3-day state visit that includes attending the Blue Economy Conference that starts next week on Monday.
It's the first visit of President Filipe Nyusi of Mozambique in the country. President Filipe was received by President Uhuru Kenyatta and accorded full military honors, including a 21-gun salute. President Filipe's visit is part of efforts by both leaders to enhance relations between their countries and review bilateral cooperation. President Kenyatta announced that after talks with his Mozambique counterpart, they had agreed to make travel and business between the two countries easier.
And we have agreed and today signed an appropriate visa waiver framework between our two countries. The signing of this MOU on visa waiver will facilitate our people-to-people contact and indeed become pivotal in enhancing our trade as well as cultural exchanges between our two peoples.
President Kenyatta highlighted Mozambique's wealth in terms of natural gas and offshore wealth and said country had much to share with Kenya.
Kenya has noted the tremendous progress that has been made in the growth of gas, coal and oil exploration in Mozambique, and Kenya seeks to learn from Mozambique's best practices, including transfer of technology, as we embark on developing our own extractive industry. And indeed, one of the proposals that we are considering is the importation of liquefied gas and coal from Mozambique starting next year through a government-to-government agreement.
Nyusi was accompanied to Nairobi by a high-level delegation, including ministers. The Mozambican delegation will meet a Kenyan one for discussions expected to realize agreements. President Filipe is scheduled to meet with members of the Makonde community living in Kenya's South Coast after President Kenyatta officially declared the community the 24th third Kenyan tribe. President Filipe will on Monday attend the Blue Economy Conference in Nairobi. Kaltun Jama, NTV.
And that, ladies and gentlemen.
And across the borders, scores of school children and a driver have been freed after a raid on a camp of separatist fighters in the southwest region of Cameroon. Now, however, a principal and a teacher are said to still be in captivity. The group of students and teachers were actually taken from a school in the city of Kumba on Tuesday. According to senior officials, 4 attackers were shot dead in the operation, but 1 was captured. Cameroon. As I mentioned earlier, today we are in the markets right here on AM Live. My name is Gladys Gachanja, and the Entrepreneurs Summit TES is on its second day, and the forum is targeting small and medium entrepreneurs from across East African region to exhibit products, network and gain mentorship. Now, that inaugural event has gathered entrepreneurs with businesses below the age of 5 years, where they can gain insights from successful business owners on how to get past the infancy stage of an enterprise. Now, the end game is to develop a distinguished community of innovators and leaders in businesses across the region. Well, this conversation and that summit comes at a very timely moment where most businesses are struggling to thrive in the current atmosphere that businesses are working in. And to help us delve into this conversation and get to understand what has been ailing the SMEs and what can be done to ensure that they thrive, and also maybe just on a personal level, how to reinvent and make sure that you stay relevant in the coming days. With me in studio, I have Jane Kagiri, who is seated next to me. She is the CEO and founder, Creative Edge Solutions. Next to her is Frida Owinga. She is the CEO and founder of Passion Fruit. I keep saying that. Passion Profit. Yeah, Passion Profit. And of course, Dr. Kamau Gashige, who is Executive Director of Gearbox, which is a non-profit organization. Thank you for making time. Now, I'll start off with you, Jane. For you, you're not only the CEO and founder of Creative Ed Solutions, but you recently walked away with the 2018 Young Entrepreneur Award. Now, for those who don't know what that is, it actually is an award given by the Africa Women Innovation and Entrepreneurship Forum, and this happened in South Africa. And this is a big deal. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And it is encouraging to hear that people are thriving despite some of the circumstances that businesses have to deal with. But you said that for you, this is not necessarily to give or pat you on the back because of the successes.
Yes.
It really gives life to something else.
Yes.
Talk more about that.
Thank you, Gladys. Again, I'll mention about the award and say it's an award I received last week from the AWI Forum. And for me, when I got this award and as I walked to the stage to receive it, the first thing that went through my mind is that it's a recognition of my resilience, on my persistence, and on my hard work and my risk-taking. Why I say this is because it was at a time when my business was about to close down. It was at a point when I was about to give up. And so I took it as a sign of God telling me, Jane, keep going. There are better things ahead for you. Because to be frank, SMEs in this country are just barely surviving. Yes.
And speaking of survival, Frida, I'm sure dealing with those that you coach when it comes to business, how to, thrive, a lot of these stories where you're struggling, some have closed shops, some are barely hanging on, have come up a lot. Why do you think is the case?
Thank you very much, Gladys, for having me here, first of all. And I think the big thing, for me, I think we need a paradigm shift because everything really starts from the mind. And as a business breakthrough coach, one thing I've discovered when I work with entrepreneurs is we have a lot of self-limiting beliefs. And our self-limiting beliefs will drive our behaviors. So it's not really our circumstances and our conditions that determine our success. So a lot of times we blame the government, we blame our conditions, but really it is our mind and some conditions that are holding in of how we have been brought up, how we have started the business. Sometimes we don't even have a vision. Most entrepreneurs are just going for the next shiny thing, and not to put them down, but everybody's really just trying to struggle to make a buck to pay bills to live. So there's no job. So the next thing you know is, what can I sell? But entrepreneurship is not just finding something to sell. It's a whole different ballgame. So it's really coming up with what are the needs, what is the need that I need to meet as an organization, but not just today. So a lot of small businesses are coming up because of needs, but they're not planning how they're going to live beyond the demand right now. So we need to think, if you're getting into business, you need to think that way because it's not a job. It's a lifetime. It's a full-time thing. So I find our limiting beliefs are more the problem. So we really need to have a paradigm shift of continuously thinking that it's struggling, it's hard, it's a challenge. Why is it struggling? Why are we struggling? Why is it hard? Why is it a challenge? Because we've been at this for for quite a bit of time.
Okay, now we'll be delving into it because there are different factors that are actually ailing those that are in business. And Dr. Kamau, we are talking about a time where we have seen the pull and tug of a capping of interest rates. We have seen the pull and tug over the finance bill that also, made a huge impact in how business is done. For you, apart from the, self-belief and or lack of the same, what else is ailing business owners?
Yeah, I'd like to add to what both of the others have just said. In essence, people go into business mostly to survive, or to make ends meet. The fact of the matter is, in developed countries, what you'll find is usually there's a social contract between government and people who have companies and so on. So there's kind of a safety net. But here, the entrepreneurship levels that we have in Africa in general, but Kenya for sure, because people don't have any kind of alternative. If they don't make some kind of do some kind of a hustle, they won't be able to survive. And so the reasons for doing the business are really just fundamentally to be able to survive. Whereas you'll find in more developed economies, people will be starting companies so that they can scale, so that they can have high growth enterprises. They have a different vision. They have a different sort of approach to why they're doing their business. And so when you're struggling really just to survive, you need all the assistance that you can get, obviously. And what you're talking about in terms of interest rates and so on are extremely important. And you'll find that when the regime of the interest rate regime with the banks in a certain country like Kenya right now are so punitive conservative because they perceive the risk to be so high, there needs to be something to be done. So the banks will claim that we're charging high interest rates because there's a great risk that people won't pay back our loans. So we have to come together. Government has to have its role to try to see how can we make that risk lower. How can we somehow give guarantees? How can we give smaller companies enough coaching and support and so on, so that whatever they're venturing into has a greater chance of succeeding, so the banks will also make their money back and be able to lend more and bring the interest rates down, because it's all about their margins at the end of the day.
Okay, now Janie, you said by the time you were getting the award, you were literally thinking of closing shop, despite the fact that you've been at it for 10 years. So maybe you can shine light on what it is that was almost bringing you to your knees.
Gladys, let me say, I've come to realize when you watch a soccer match being played and you're watching it from outside, it's very easy to dictate how the players should play the game because you don't actually know what is happening in the field. So many times you'll see people criticize entrepreneurs, say we are their complainers and all that. But trust me, so many entrepreneurs in this country are doing the right things. They are in it out of passion, they are in it out of the love of what they do, and just not as a way of surviving. However, there are so many bottlenecks and challenges that they encounter along the way that actually get them to where they are. I'll give an example of like the interest rate capping that has severely affected SMEs. I being one of them, when it was first done, I thought this was good news. And as the banks kept talking about why it would work against us, I thought, no, that cannot be possible. At least I'll pay less interest. But what I didn't realize, most of my loans prior to that were relationship-based, where the bank did not need to do so much for them to give me a loan. Now, a bank needs so much for you to get access to financing. Let's look at another issue. We have delayed payments. Delayed payments from government, delayed payments from private sector. What happens to an entrepreneur who diligently supplied on time, used their capital, supplied, and then 1 year later they have not been paid? You have employees to take care of, you have overheads to take care of. In that whole cycle, what is the mistake of the entrepreneur? It's not their mindset that is wrong. It is not that they're not working hard. In fact, we're always in town by 6, committed to do what we've come to do. So at the end of the day, there are so many challenges we're actually encountering. And I believe if they would be checked, any entrepreneur would thrive in this country. Yeah.
Okay, Frida, clearly you can hear there are things that go beyond your mindset.
I beg to refuse because from time immemorial, how we think of what we're doing matters. And are entrepreneurs struggling in Kenya? Absolutely. The thing is, he rightly said that we start businesses because we don't have an alternative. But the reality is our foundations are not always correct, and you can't build on a faulty foundation. So it's okay to wake up and work very hard, but if you're on Mombasa Road and you're trying to go to Kisumu, even if you drive very fast, you will never get to Kisumu. All right, you'll have to stop and turn around and find the way to Naivasha and then to Kisumu. So one of the things, I recently read a research that was done on why small businesses, the mistakes that make small businesses close. And one of them was, number one, building something nobody wants, which is very common when you're desperate and you're thinking, what can I sell to make money? So I'll go into the next shiny thing, be it quails, be it whatever. All right. So I'm in no way trying to put entrepreneurs down. They are really trying, but trying with the wrong tactics and the wrong strategies will continue to struggle. So that's all I'm saying, is that we need to stop, step back and find out where do I need to make a change? All right, so one of the mistakes is building something nobody wants. Another one is not having enough money for the business. So banks are in business to make money. They have to take the interest. And I kid you not, Gladys, there are many other options for finance. As I sit here, I work with an organization called Countable that recently gave somebody $300,000, no collateral. All right, and I've been trying to talk to women about this because it's therefore women, you know, the procurement, 30% procurement to help women and youth to get it, but they're caught up with the bank at the 14% interest. Countable partners with a small business owner, like this lady supplies medical supply, healthcare. She supplies beds and stuff. So the key thing about it is they partner with you. Who is the person who's going to supply? It's a process, but we have the mindset that money only comes from the bank. There are accelerator programs that you go through to help you get your foundations right, and then they put you in a place where you can get money from investment. Yes, banks is one way of getting money, but there are other non-traditional ways where we can get money. Like Countable doesn't charge a fixed capped 14% interest. The interest is based on the profit that you'll make. So sometimes as entrepreneurs, we are struggling because we have not really looked at the profit we are making. We're just going, okay, I need to sell this, but thinking through how much is that really going to make me? So I like Countable because before they help an entrepreneur, they ensure that the supplier is a supplier that's legit, that's going to pay and pay on time, because that's how they also make their money. They ensure that the entrepreneur is going to make a profit. A lot of times, the entrepreneurs I work with are working very hard, but they're looking at the next person who owes them and saying this money is not coming on time. But the truth of it is we don't have a business plan. We have not planned our business to know how much money our business needs. And because we are desperate, we are always going after the next person who owes us money. So are entrepreneurs working hard? Absolutely. Are they passionate? Absolutely. But sometimes we need to step back and find out where exactly is this pinch coming from. What do I need to do? And there's a lot of information. There's a lot available in this country. It's just, okay, which one do I really need to pick to help me?
And what works for
and
you?
what will work for me at the season of my business? Because there's a lot of information, and information is no longer power, because the information we download from Google, from YouTube, from everywhere, it's not regulated. And so you're going to try, let me try this, let me try this, let me try this. But if you stop and step back and plan your business and know that I'm not going to go for every shiny program that comes out, and I tell you we have more than enough programs. There are many shiny things. So the entrepreneur's struggle is, which one do I pick?
Okay, now even as we look at that, Dr. Kamal, most would say they are on their knees because they spread themselves thin. And some is either, as she is mentioning, they did not do their homework to find out how best to take care of their finances. But then again, others could be like Jane. You put your money out there, invested, but you're not being paid. So how do you maneuver that?
Yeah, I think there's so many different kinds of issues that small companies face, and I think that's why having structures that they can go to for support, like business coaching, the platform that I run is similar. We're looking to see how we can help people to structure their business and plan it, is important, so people have an understanding for how to plan what it is that they want to do. For example, or something that was said just now is that people have to make sure that whatever the product is that they have or they're thinking about is something that has a market. And so you have to do user-centered design is what we call it. You have to, human-centered design is another way to put it. So you have to go out to the market and really understand what people want, and really understand also how to package it so that you can actually sell more than your competitor. And we're looking at a very interesting space. When I spoke in the beginning about business and a lot of people doing businesses to survive, we have to understand there's a very great range of kinds of businesses. There's a very micro, there's small, there's medium, and there's some large businesses, and they don't all have and face the same issues. But if you want to look at it from a policy perspective or a national perspective, 85 to 90% of our workforce is actually engaged in the informal sector, and they're employed within that sector, and these are really small companies. So when we're looking at those kinds of companies, it's a different type of whatever you're advising is different from what you're advising people who maybe SMEs or the medium size, well, small and medium, and also the larger companies. So I believe that when you speak about the youth fund, the women's fund, and all these different funds, there needs to be structures that are distributed geographically. So wherever you are in the country, there's a place that you can go to get information. It could be online, it could be physical, where you're able to get some advice around how to plan your business and what the resources available to you might be. Government as a customer is often extremely attractive because it's the biggest customer in any country. But the problems are huge, especially when government isn't paying on time, as we've already heard.
Which is what she is alluding to.
And there are ways to try to see whether, for example, money for a specific job can be put into escrow or some kind of an account, so it's held, by an independent third party like a bank or something until the job is done, and then there's a way to determine that the job has been done, and then money is released immediately. Because when you're looking at a situation where Treasury has problems, that money that was set aside to pay whoever might then be quickly taken somewhere else because there's a leakage somewhere else, and so it's not available to make the payments. And so to sort of make sure that it can be ring-fenced, so that it cannot be touched and removed, so that these guys, after they've supplied whatever it is, they get paid immediately. Then the economy will be chugging along at a more healthy pace.
And before you chime in, Frida, I guess the question here would be, for example, she is representing many that have had, you know, taken tenders, supplied, and money never came. So in this case of an SME, what do I do to protect myself in case that money never comes through? How do I now move on?
It's extremely difficult, especially when you're a small company.
And that is the question. Yeah. How do we maneuver? Because Frida is talking about changing, stepping back.
I like that. You know, I've supplied and the government is not paying me. So what we encourage small business owners to do is to diversify their, their products. So if you supply the bank, then if you supply the government, what do you supply? Because it is seasonal. You cannot rely on tenders. That is the one thing I tell all people that do tenders that I work with. So we sit with you to find out what are your other skills and talents, what other products can you create. We call it having a bread and butter strategy. So as you wait for the big payment from government or Kenya Power or whoever, what's your bread and butter strategy? Because the government will be late, the corporates will be late. They'll say 30 days, I've waited 90 days. All right, so if I don't have a bread and butter strategy, something that can give me money on a weekly or a daily basis, mind shift again. We have this mind shift of 30-day payment. Who said we have to be paid after every 30 days? I have a client that we've structured for her. She has a business that she gets paid every day. And she was in tendering. So coming out of tendering, what is the business that you can do? But when she got one big tender, she got millions of shillings, but she had to wait and wait and wait. So again, mindset of waiting for one thing. Why must you wait for one thing? What other revenue streams can you create? How can you leverage technology? How can you go into other fields? Because as a human being, you have a lot of potential, and your passion can create other streams of revenue for you. So helping you find a bread and butter strategy, so you are not just fixated on waiting for the government to pay you. You'll sleep hungry. It's hard.
I can only imagine. I mean, Jane, you've been at this for 10 years. You got an award, patted you on the back, but you are almost closing. So what has been your bread and butter strategy?
No, Gladys, first I need to clear that green picture that has been painted of an entrepreneur. And I want to give a simple narration of my life as Jane Kagiri.
Yes.
Let me say that I went to study for my first degree in University of Madras in India. Anybody who knows India, they train you to be an employer, not an employee. And that is what I was trained to be. So when I came back to the country in the year 2006, I did not come thinking, will I be employed, won't I be employed? Already my professors had told me you should be an employment generator. And that's what I came back to do. Coming back to the country, that was in the year 2008 is when I started my registration process for a business. And I remember we had to queue at Sharia House, maybe almost for a whole day, then come back after 8 days to check if your registration had gone through and all that. Today, when I look at the ease of doing business, projections and rankings that have gone up, I remember in 2013, I think we were number 129. Today, we are number 61. And it's an improvement by 19 positions from last year. When I look at that scenario, I can attest that there has been so much change in this country, and positive change at that, especially for business people. Because those days I used to look back and wonder, what happens to a woman from Isiolo who has to make a trip to Nairobi to register a business, go back for 8 days and then come back again? So a lot of improvements have been made. Back to my story. So after I registered my company, again, I could not afford to even have an office. I started from my little house in South Bay. And what I'll do is get a quotation from a client. By the way, I'm a graphics designer. I run a shop, and I still have the tender business.
So you're diversified.
And I have private sector clients. So it's not that we wake up to think, where is the next tender? When is government going to do this? So those are the kind of businesses I run. And what began from my house in South Bay has now become a big company that employs people. Along that journey, I remember there's a point, I realized I cannot keep commuting back to my house when I need to do quotations. And do you know where my office was? At the jobless corner outside the Hilton Hotel. And in 2015, thanks to the government, I received an order of Grand Warrior commendation from His Excellency the President, and it's because of the journey I had taken as an entrepreneur and the number of entrepreneurs I'd mentored. Gladys, I think the biggest problem our entrepreneurs in this country are having is lack of information, lack of markets for their goods, and lack of financing. Put it any other way, those are still our challenges. Today I look back and I see everybody who is getting into the market as an entrepreneur, and I look at them and I wonder, who has mentored these people? Who will tell them what to do and what not to do? But trust you me, even despite doing all the right things, you still find yourself getting caught up in this web. I'll say in June this year, I was invited to Babson College for an executive program. And Babson College is the leading entrepreneurship college in the world. And what we were taught at that college is, and this is 10 years into me being in business, the professor who is an employer of 3,000 employees, again the beauty, Dr. Kamau, when we talk about these foreign countries, anybody who trains an entrepreneur is an entrepreneur. Unfortunately, in our case, we find ourselves being taught entrepreneurship by somebody who has not taught, even sold a pen. So this person can criticize you, tell you, mind shift, do what, do what, do what. Your mind is at the right place. But practically, these things may not apply at the end of the day. So I remember this professor walking into class and he asked us, what are your kind of businesses? And I remember telling him the kind of business I do. He told me, Jane, that should be your business number 15. And he concluded by saying, if you are in a business which at the end of the day, you don't walk home with cash, and cash means cash, touch it. Literally cash. He told us you're running a charitable organization. And so 10 years later, I'm back to a strategy of how long can I remain in a business which is not cash-based. So again, I hope this is a better picture of entrepreneurship. These are people out there working hard, not waking up to look for to attend.
A very well painted picture, I must say. Okay.
Gladys, sorry. Just to be clear, at Passion Profit, I've been in entrepreneurship for 25 years across industries and geographies. And when I speak from that place. And of course, there are diverse situations and diverse experiences. We cannot we have to be careful not to generalize everyone. So I speak from where I sit. Having been in business over 25 years, when the Sharia, I didn't even know the way to Sharia house. And then our business mentoring coaches are also entrepreneurs. So they, Jane, just to let you know, they have sold pens. I like the way she says they don't sell pens. So just in case you're listening, at Passion Profit, we pride ourselves that we are for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. And that's why we try to get you out of the mindset. And the mindset is a principle. It's not something Frida has created or entrepreneurs has created. From time immemorial, we have been told that as a man thinks, so is he. We have a shift that we have to wait 30 days for payment. So the corporate may have 30-day payment. So that should tell me as an entrepreneur, what do I need to make money every week, every day? It is not the corporate's problem. It is not the government's problem. It is my problem to find out what products are needed in the market. All right. And when we talk about access to markets, the first thing is when people are getting into the market, they are not defining what is their market dominating position, which is something we teach at Passion Profit. We help you to understand what is the secondary market you're getting into, what is the primary market, and what is the strategic position you're going to get into. Because let's say you are in training and you feel training is saturated, training is the secondary market. You want to train in leadership, but what is your sweet spot in leadership? And then we create a market dominating position for you, so you are not going to copy and spray what others are doing. The marketing strategies we're going to give you are very different. So it's not so much, and this is my opinion, it's not so much the problem that there's no market. It's really how we enter the market, how we position ourselves. There's a lot of copying and spraying, and everybody has a passion and everybody has a sweet spot that once you enter the big secondary market, it is just what is the primary market I need to focus on. Like he said earlier, we try to do too many things. We lack a focus, and when you lack a focus, I always ask people in my programs, when people are sitting in a room and names are being pulled out of a hat, why should you be pulled out? Because you're selling hats, you're selling cars, you're selling this, you're selling the other. You can't be a master at everything. Robin Sharma tells us that. So when it comes to how you do your business, there are different philosophies. There's lots and lots of philosophies. So the first thing, if you don't have a vision, why did you start this business? I started this business in Kenya in 2010 because so many people were coming to me asking me for work. But the people that were asking me for work, Gladys, they had jobs. So I was wondering what is going on. But what they were looking for was fulfillment. So at Passion Profit, we're helping you create a life and work that you love and enjoy. So we don't make a mind shift again. You don't have to have a big office and have many people working in that office to be a success. You can leverage technology and have people working for you around the globe and working from your home, in the basement of your home. So again, mind shift. I used to pay a lot of rent at Rigas, and trying to have a lot of staff, but that's a corporate model. We are startups. So again, mind shift. We have to shift from corporate model, and there's nothing wrong copying the corporate because that is what has been modeled for us. But we are startups, and we need to have a different model if we are going to survive, because copying corporate, we don't have deep corporate pockets. We don't have corporate directors. We have a different model. We are reading from a different script. So there are many dynamics to this conversation.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
There's no one straight way, but there is a way for every entrepreneur who will step back and find out, what is my end in mind? What is my focus? What is my strategic position? Who am I serving? What do I want to be known for? Okay, I want to be known for helping people create a life and work that they love and enjoy. And as they do that, creating wealth for themselves and for others.
Okay.
You understand?
A lot that needs to be talked about in as far as SMEs are concerned, but it is interesting to actually note that not only SMEs are struggling, there are big giants that have been in this industry that are currently on their knees. The question is, how did we get here and why? Well, this conversation continues in the Market AM Live. We'll be back. Welcome to AM Live. My name is Gladys Gachanja and we are in the market this morning. Our conversation around the SMEs environment in Kenya. Well, it has been hostile. Many are barely making it. Others are already on their knees and others seem to be thriving. So why is it that they are thriving? All these conversations we're having this morning, and it is good to see you engaging us on Twitter at NTV Kenya at Gladys_Gachanja. There is one here from Andrew Franklin who says, the environment for nearly all businesses in Kenya is toxic and hostile to sustain commercial activities. Another here from Eric Musila who says, the people who have a better chance of improving SMEs are those with experience from governments. Let the government sack old people who have worked for the government for about 10 years and more, and they will be better placed for the task. Interesting look at this, but also others who are asking questions, how can we fix the Kenyan economy when we have cartels and corrupt leaders in this country? And this is seen across board, especially when it comes to, services, when it comes to where you need to go, Sharia House or wherever is Huduma Center. And I think that's where we'll start off with Dr. Kamau. Some have said, I want this, I have the passion, I've got the money, I'm heading somewhere. But there is an obstacle from the start.
You mean in terms of the way that the government works?
Exactly. She said even registering, fine. Right now, the ease of doing business, looking good. But when you get to it, there's a cost that comes with now even starting and surviving.
Yeah, I think the comment that was made earlier by Jane, I believe, regarding how the government has shifted the environment for business, I think is correct. That there's been a lot done to try to make it easier for people to set up, a shorter time to set up your business and things like that. I think the current effort looking at blockchain and artificial intelligence under Dr. Bitange Ndemo that has been commissioned by the ICT CS, Joe Mushero, is a really important exercise, because what it does, especially where blockchain is concerned, is to really in effect shine a light on all transactions. So when you've got this system where every single application is recorded in multiple instances, so you have a record that not just one person controls about what happened, that you paid this fee, that you did this on this and that day, and there is the requirement that the government office is supposed to then give you that license within this number of days and so on. And in terms of government's own performance contracting and so on of all their departments, they'll be able, because there'll be that record, to come and take you to task. It's almost like an ERP, or this computer-based system for managing a company's processes and so on, on steroids, because you've got here now this blockchain. So everything that's being done cannot be hidden from view. And in fact, it should be such that even members of the public are able to have access to that particular database to see what happened when. And those records cannot be changed because there are multiple records. So I believe that would be a very big step. And it's being looked at especially for land title deeds, and a variety of different things. It can be used in a very wide range of things. So I think for me, using technology to try to control some of these things is important. But the bigger question is, why are these things happening in the first place? Why has the culture gone to a point where people's first course of action is something that's not honest? That, I think, is the bigger question. And I think that's where the software of Kenyans, the way we think our culture, is where we should start, in terms of why are people so inclined to give a bribe or to take a bribe. And I think once we start dealing with that, it's not uniform in all countries. There's many countries where there's a far greater honesty index, if you can put it that way, than what we have here in Kenya. Like I was in Dubai recently, and when you're there, you can leave things, you can forget a laptop somewhere and really not worry too much that you won't find it. It will be there when you come back. And so what is it about our own culture? Even in Nairobi, I know my father would tell me in the 1960s, people would sell newspapers in this city in 5 different places, but they could only be in one themselves. The rest of the places, they'd leave the pile of papers and a pile of change. And in this very city, people would honor, and they would put their money down, they take the paper, take their change, and they wouldn't steal. So what's happened to Kenya over the 50-year period? That means that now we're so distrusting that we have to put blockchain and all kinds of policing elements into place to get what we need so that honesty can be applied. And yet we call ourselves a Christian country. So it's an important question.
Well, Jane, to you, and this I know you've said, it was not a walk in the park being a woman to start a business and even thrive in it, and especially even a young woman. at that. How has this actually stopped many from getting into business, and some even brought them to a close?
No, Gladys, to answer that, let me take you a few steps back to my story. After I registered my company in the year 2008, and I remember thinking I was ready for business, going around government institutions, putting out my company there, my company profile, and I thought it was as easy as telling government, you do business, give me business. I didn't know there was something called pre-qualification, where you needed to pay 3,000 bob for any category that you wanted to pre-qualify for. Since my background was in computer science, my assumption was that let me just go to for computer accessories and all that. And I remember looking at that scenario and thinking, I'm just out of school, I'm required to pay 3,000 shillings, and I don't have. If you want to pre-qualify in as many ministries, remember back then I think there used to be 30 or 40 ministries, that would have meant hundreds of thousands of shillings. So I looked at that scenario, then I looked at if you wanted to tender, you needed to pay 5,000 shillings, and something struck with me. Again, talk mind shift, talk positivity, that's what entrepreneurs always have. Do you know what I did? I looked at that scenario and I thought, there's no woman, youth, or person with disability in this country who will be able to manage this, this situation. And guess what? 2013, I was on the ballot, fighting to be a woman representative to actually advocate for the issues of these people. That I did. Unfortunately, and today looking back, God must have said you won't win this seat because you need to enjoy the work of your hands. Because after that, the Jubilee government executed the 30% access to government procurement opportunity. I remember back then, so many people would ask me, Jane, you like whining, you like doing what? But I would put these facts out. How do I compete with an established company? They have access to capital, they have access to everything they need, and I do not have that. So, looking at that scenario from 2013, all that was changed. You don't have to pay much for you to access government procurement opportunities. And guess what, Gladys? 2013, after losing the election, I lost everything with me. And that's how come Jobless Corner became my office. But from there, I again remembered, I'm not crippled. Let me start working around government offices and seeking for opportunities. Gladys, I rose from being a one employee, and by 2015, I think I had 15 employees, and I would actually have 100 casual workers at a site. Because when I looked at the access to government procurement opportunity, here was the construction industry. Again, Jane, you have fought, you have lobbied, here comes opportunities, then there are lack women who will be in those particular industries. So it's like me who kept shouting about this, let me go into that construction industry. And I'm so glad, as Frida said, many of us have a reason why we became entrepreneurs. For me, I stand by what my professors told me. I want to be an employment generator. I want to change lives. I have looked at my employees, some who couldn't travel home for 6 years because they couldn't afford bus fare to go to their home counties. Today they are able to do that. Others are able to pursue their talents. Myself was able to go back to school. So what I'm trying to say is government came up with a very good opportunity, the access to government procurement opportunity. But along the way, just as somebody has commented, corruption came in, cartels came in. Today I look at articles I read in the newspaper of the scandals that are happening. And I see a company that has never traded even for a day, today gets a tender worth 900 million. And I look at myself, I'm like, Jane, can I get you 10 years in business? You do not even qualify for anything close to that. So again, the system has been abused. I was a great advocate on AGPU. But the unfortunate thing is now I sit with young people, women and youth, and they tell me, Jane, the one thing you're forgetting to tell us is we must know the cartels, we must know somebody for payments to come through, and unfortunately, it becomes difficult to defend it anymore.
Well, I think Dr. Kamau, she just answered what has happened to Kenyans, and it is really unfortunate. And I think at this point, Frida, she mentioned that the professors told her a business, one that is successful, you've got to have cash that you touch it. Absolutely. And some people go into it hoping to have that cash, but that doesn't happen overnight. The question is, despite all these things that you have to do to build up this SME, what are the things that you need to keep in mind also to keep pushing through the green?
As simple as it sounds, you need to have a plan. And your plan is, what is your end in mind? Like Jane has said, her end in mind is generating work for others. And then you walk backwards, all right? So having a vision, for us a vision is what is a preferable mental image of the future that you have. I have an image that there'll be more people working. There'll be more people able to, you know, to get around and do what they need to do. by the work that I do. So what will that entail? A lot of times people beat their chest, and I applaud them for starting business without money. And how you say starting business with hope. Hope is great, but it's not a strategy. You need a predictable system of how you're going to produce your products, how your product will get into market, who is even in the market who needs it. I help people turn their passion into profit. And one pitfall is having a passion that people need but don't have money to pay for. Like a lot of people who like to sing. All right, you like to sing, you're going to cut one record after another, but who is really going to pay you for it? So the key thing is figuring out that this passion that you have, this drive that you have, how is it really going to generate money for you, apart from wishing? And now the way we have the market, you can go out and test your product. You can ask on social media what people think about it and actually make some money before you go big. And think about, remember earlier I said that one of the problems why we fail is not having enough money. And not having enough money means not being able to pay people when that supplier has not paid you. And sometimes it could just mean having a job on the side to make sure that you have the money. I encourage people to transition out of jobs instead of just cut it, because when you have a job, you have a pay slip, the bank can give you money. When you don't have the job, the bank can't give you money. And if you don't sell your goods, you won't have money. Lack of money is lack of customers. Lack of customers is a product that nobody wants. All right, so we need to rethink how we are creating products and who needs the products that we are creating. Do they have money? So a lot of times out of desperation, we do something that other people are doing and we've seen them excel at it. But we need to do some research and find out, is there still room for more? How can I position it so that I bring in a value addition? He talked about innovation. What is some value addition I can put so that I'm unique, I'm different, to position myself strategically so that more customers can still choose me? So there are a lot of dynamics. It's not a one-way, one size fits all. Okay. So it really starts with what is my end in mind, what is my philosophy, and who is out there who can support me, who has the philosophy that I have. Because even when you go for an investor, if you get an investor who does not align with your philosophy, there's going to be trouble down the line. All right. So, and what is philosophy? The way I think, the way I behave, the way I get my results. Bottom line, if you do not like your results, go back to your behavior. Go back to what do I believe that made me behave like this, then you will see where your results came from.
And I'm glad you touched on that, because we've got to also look internally. Let's talk about management or mismanagement of the same. I mean, we've seen big companies literally close shop. We're talking about the Nakumats of this world, the Lumiers, we're talking about Uchumi. And some of the reports is that something wasn't done right internally to start with. And this has also been a tale or two for some of their SMEs. Dr. Kamau, what are some of the experiences you've seen, and how have people been able to maneuver out of it?
Yeah, I think from the very start, and let me just sort of answer you with regard to what we do in my space at Gearbox. And what we're doing is we're dealing with people who innovate and make a product, a physical product, and we have the machines that they can use and share in order to make a prototype. And then with that prototype, they're able to make maybe 10, 100 of those and do a pilot to see whether the market wants it. Now you're dealing with people who are innovators and not necessarily managers. You're speaking about managers. And so very early on, we bring in people who can come and talk to them, experts who will come like Frida, who will come and talk to them and say, look, you're very good at innovating and you've got a very good mind in terms of engineering and so on, but really you're not a CEO. And to be honest, you probably wouldn't even be happy running all the aspects of the business that the CEO needs to be looking at. You may not feel fulfilled because that's not your nature. You might want to stick to innovating the next product, improving those that are there, and hire a CEO and give that CEO shares. And so the structure, how you value what you have, even when you've got a very small business, you need to be able to value it so that you're able, when you bring somebody new in, to know how much to give that person. Because a lot of arguments arise when you find you brought in somebody to partner with you, and that person you feel after maybe 6 months is not carrying enough weight. You brought them in because they're your friend. They may stop being your friend because now you think that they're actually getting a free ride on your work. So you need to have, we need to be able to, people need to be able to get advice on how to structure their company. Then you go further to have some sort of oversight. You may have investors, you may have some sort of a board, and they're the ones who will help you to not run into those problems that you're talking about, who will be able to flag when something is going wrong. And numbers are very important. You need to be able to track what you're doing. You need to have goals in terms of paying your loans back, and so on and so forth. And if those goals are based on the right kind of logic in terms of the plan, then you have somebody overseeing and say, how come the milestone was that in month number 3 we'll have done this, how come it hasn't happened, and what action can we take to correct that? So management becomes very micro in that sense, and for it to be successful, to avoid those sorts of things you're talking about. And when it happens in a big company, it could very well be corruption within that big company itself. Forget government, because of what we said our culture has become nowadays. Somebody saw an opportunity to make money off the company, and that's what they do. They may take money that was meant for something, invest it somewhere thinking I'll put it back and they won't notice, and in the meantime something goes wrong on this side. That's very common as well. Big insurance companies we've seen going down because directors decided to take the money they're getting from the premiums and buy land, and I'll put it back before it can be noticed, and it never happened. And so you're seeing oversight as a very important instrument for getting management to work for that company.
Okay, and Jane, maybe as one that runs their own company, work ethic, business ethic goes a long way in keeping you afloat. And because you can speak about the without factors, but within there are things that you've got to stand out or stand on for you to stand out. Speak on that and how some employers have actually dug their own grave.
Okay, let me speak for the SMEs and say that I think the biggest thing that is lacking for SMEs is lack of mentorship. And I've been fortunate to have been mentored by very great people who taught me. And I take that back to India. India has a strong root of how you should be devoted, how you should be committed, and all that. So that is the kind of attitude I came back to the country with. And when I look around, I wish so many other people would be taught the same. And unfortunately, I've come to realize, which I stated earlier on, that entrepreneurs are getting mentored by people who are not entrepreneurs. Because you need somebody who will tell you, Jane, at the point at which you're not able to pay your loan, can you go to the bank and tell the bank your situation? Instead of ignoring calls, avoiding the bank, all that. You need to be in a situation where if the project is running late, you need to meet the client and tell them we are running late, or it looks like we are going to run late because of A, B, C, and D. So those are some of the things that are actually happening. The other thing I've also realized in lack of, in what happens in our country is, for example, for entrepreneurs, as a tradition, we are still yet to accept that entrepreneurship is a form of employment. So you'll find me 10 years later, PS positions are advertised, somebody calls me and tells me, Jane, you need to apply for that position. And I'm thinking, guys, I've been employed for 10 years and realizing that. So you look at those scenarios and you are thinking, if you are not strong enough to know to remain focused, there are so many distractions along the way. Number 2, and I keep saying this is something that has come to distract a lot of people. Now we have social media. You look at people's Facebook timelines and you see, oh my God, Gladys is in Europe. And you're thinking she's an entrepreneur like me. How come she's in Europe? You don't realize Gladys could be there on a sponsorship. She did not even spend a dime, but took time to take a photo at the Eiffel Tower or somewhere. Then you, as the other entrepreneur, start thinking, now how do I make this quick bucks, because I need to put on my timeline that I'm also in the United States. So those are kind of some of the things that we're actually working with. The third thing is, I think we are judging our businesses too fast. I think it's yesterday I listened on radio that Safaricom is now marking its 18th year. Then you look at most of us, you want to judge your business when it's 1 month old, 2 months old, and you're saying this thing is not working. How is it not working and you've not even allowed it to be an year old, 2 years old, or even 3 years old? So I think those are some of the challenges most of our SMEs are having, and mentorship has to be the key above all of them. And just to add to that, there's something I've also come to realize. When we even talk about this mentorship and even how businesses are coming down, and especially the SMEs. Like recently I was talking to somebody and she was telling me how she's frustrated because she's been banking with this very big bank for the last 5 years. And today when she tried getting, that day when she tried getting a loan from them, the bank denied her. And so she was furious and telling me, I'm going to close my accounts, I'm going to do all this. But what I asked her is, did you take time to study the business model of that bank? Because there are banks who are corporate oriented, the others who are supply chain oriented, and the others which are micro oriented. For me, I would say I am where I am today because of a bank that believes in micro enterprises, and that is where I started off from. So who sits with these entrepreneurs to tell them all these things? So many of these businesses are falling just because of lack of information, and maybe just because nobody took time to actually mentor them on how they should run them.
Very well said. And Frida, yes, even as we talk about how to set up the business and keep it afloat, there are things that you've got to look at within that keep you afloat or, you know, sustainable. For example, your own employees, you've got to think about the people who will be working for you. And if you have a high turnover, it means you'll be dealing with things that you shouldn't be dealing with, because a turnover comes with an expense of maybe training, an expense of, you know, salaries and what have you. When you're training or business coaching, do you delve into how to keep a healthy atmosphere within your business?
Absolutely. We have to look at the people culture in your organization. And Gladys, I may sound like a stuck record, it starts with your end in mind. What is the vision for the organization? Because the vision you have for the organization, the preferable mental image that you have for the future is what you will bring into the organization, starting with you as the leader. The work ethic you will model is what the people that are coming in are going to model. So that's number one. So what is your end in mind will determine the kind of people you will hire, the kind of processes that you will set up, the kind of partners you will have, the kind of suppliers that you'll use. So we do that through a business model canvas, and business model canvas is something you can download online. But again, like I said, there's a lot of information, but if you're not able to conceptualize it for your vision and for your season and for your condition, because everybody, right now, there's a lot going on. There are people who are surviving, there are people who are thriving, there are people who are in between. So when you download the business model canvas, what's your end in mind? What is your value proposition? You know, what is the key thing that you're going to be selling? Who is your target audience? How much do you want to make? Many times when people come to me and they're talking about their business, I always ask, how much did you make last month? 1 out of 10 will tell me how much they made. And again, not to put down anyone, it's a fact of life that if you don't plan to make money, you will not have any. So if you don't know how much you made last month, how will you know what you should make this month? And if you don't know how much you made last month, it's a clear sign that you don't have a track record of how you are doing, which is already trouble. Because if you're not measuring what you're doing, you cannot improve it. So sometimes a small business owner can be very busy doing many things, but the key things that you need to be doing, which is tracking how much money are you making. And every time I'm told that money is not everything, but without money that business is going to close and bills are going to catch up with you and you're going to sleep hungry. So the one thing as an entrepreneur you must always know, and this is something I learned from one of my mentors, is how much money do you have? Cash is king. And cash is king. Where does cash come from? Customers. So if you don't have customers, there will be no cash. And your customers are your internal customers who are your employees. Because if you're not good to your employees, if you don't hire right, another problem why businesses are shutting down, the number 2 reason is hiring poorly. We don't pay attention to how we hire people. We hire based on the limited resources that we have. I have a client that has hired an accountant for 90,000, but is a month. And this guy doesn't even have a CPA, but because she's scared of numbers, she thinks that I need to hire somebody that I need to pay a lot of money. So we have restructured it, because you cannot source out counting for 15, 20,000, and this person doesn't need to be sitting under your office anyway. So again, yes, we do help you with that, and we use the business model canvas.
Clearly, information is power here, and it's interesting. I see people saying, like, for example, Migat says, capacity building programs for SMEs is important. Provide sustainable market linkages by supporting the Chamber of Commerce activities is prudent. And I think this feeds into the question about training, capacity building, because some people clearly, from the conversations we are having, you walk into it and you have no idea where to start. Or even while at it, you need to equip yourself as time keeps going and things keep evolving. Speak on the same, Doctor.
Yeah, the training aspect is really important, and again we need to look at it, kind of categorize the business space from the point of view that, as I said earlier, the majority of businesses are micro in this country, but there's some that may be looked at as the ones that perhaps can have high growth potential and really end up employing a whole lot of people. And in that space, a lot of it is driven by technology. So we find, for example, that in the technology space, there's a lot of excitement and hype around Kenya. and the opportunities that are availing themselves at the base of the pyramid, as it's described. And so you're finding companies, when M-Pesa had the success that it had, and following that there's been a whole lot of other companies like M-Kopa, for example, using technology to reach new customers and so on. There's interest even in investing in the small companies that are in this country from outside of the country. And you'll find that, for example, in the year 2015-16, there was on the order of about $85 million invested into companies in Kenya, but 90% of those founders, in the tech space I'm talking specifically, and 90% of the founders of those SMEs were foreigners. They were not Kenyans, but they're here in this space. And they're coming from top universities around the world, from Ivy League colleges in the US, Babsons and so on of this world. And they're coming with a whole ecosystem that's backing them in terms of the way they've been trained, how to come to look at the problem. They come to this country and see, okay, a poor person can afford to pay, let's say 100 shillings a day, but they can't afford to pay 3,000 shillings at the end of the month. It's the same amount of money. It's how they distribute their everyday money. So the Internet of Things and mobile money came in to make M-Kopa possible. So somebody is doing a higher purchase model to buy things based on technology. And that now opened up a whole new range of customers and so on and so forth. And the money backing it, also 80% of that 85 million also came from outside. So our own internal investors are not really alive to what's happening and what the potential for this tech sector is in Kenya. And most money in Kenya is looking to invest in real estate, something that they understand better. But it means that you will wake up after about 10 years and look at the new businesses that have arisen, and we'll find actually it's like a new colonization. So it's an important thing because it's waking us up. And I want to say kudos to the companies like M-Kopa and so on. I'm not knocking that, but I'm saying for us now to move forward, we need to see how do we get more of our own people, people like Jane who have studied IT and so on, computer science, to come into the marketplace with the support of the training around business, and also from the investment from local investors, and all the advice about how to structure that company, how it's valued and so on. One of the foreign funds that's in Kenya, we were speaking to one of the founders and asking, how come when I look at the portfolio there are so few Kenyan companies that you're actually supporting, meaning the Kenyan indigenous Kenyans running those companies? And they said that one of the things we face is that when we support a Kenyan company and the founders make enough money to buy a house in Runda and another one at the coast and a couple of four-wheel drives, wamefika. They stop trying. They now golf every other day. And these guys want a company that's going to scale across the continent, not that's going to buy your house in Runda. So we also have to think about our own goals and our own ambitions and what we can actually do. How do you make a company that will scale and go across the entire continent? Now, that's not for everybody. There's different reasons why people start companies, but I think we need to see some more of those. So it's all about training and understanding, as we've been saying.
Okay, and that fits to being dynamic, being reinventing yourself with time. And this has come a long way, especially with technology, and there are different ways that you can actually find or plug in a way that you stay relevant through the different times. In your case, what have you seen has worked and would be considered probably a trick to this?
In my case, and the greatest advice I give SMEs is always make sure you're a member of an association or an organization. And why I say this is you may lack market for your goods, you may lack information, but on these platforms you get all that you need. So every time, in fact, I'll give an example of the award I received. Till date, I don't know who nominated me, but I believe it's somebody in one of the associations I'm part of, and somebody maybe who understands what I've been doing. So that's the number one advice I would give anyone in SME. Number two, being an entrepreneur does not mean an end to education. You have to keep reinventing yourself. Like in 2016, I went back to school for my master's degree. As I mentioned, June this year, I was back for an entrepreneurship course, because as you keep learning, you keep understanding the latest technologies in the market, you build bigger networks and networks that will help your business. And at the end of the day, you realize all these three things that you're lacking, the finances, the information, and the markets, you're able actually to access them on those platforms.
Fantastic. Now, Frida, I know you need to leave, but before I let you go, I think it's prudent to just chime in on how important it is to reinvent self. Some people or some of the SMEs have survived because they found the trick to having, you know, finding the way to just survive through the changing times. So what are those, you know, secrets you could probably share with us before you leave?
Are you ready?
Yeah.
You'll probably jump out of your seat. Your mindset.
Oh, wow. We've heard that a couple of times.
It's like that. Because the key thing is, the way we are conditioned to think about failure in this country, you don't make it to, you get standard 8 results are just out, so there's going to be a lot of trouble for the children who didn't make the grade to go to the next level, you know. And then when people come to me for coaching, and I start, what are you doing? They start with that. When I was in standard 8, my grade didn't allow me to do ABCD. Or when I was in form 4, my grade didn't allow me to. So it becomes a real defining moment for them. So they tend to fear failure and become risk averse because of that. When I failed, I wasn't given what I wanted. My marks did not allow me to become a doctor. I was given this other thing. So I cannot afford to fail. Entrepreneurship is failing every day, because it's finding out that this thing that I'm so passionate about, people don't need it, so I have to pack it up and start another one. Where Passion Profit is today, when we started, we had workshops and seminars. We had an 8-week program. Today, we are leveraging technology. We have a 5-step profits system that is used, that is a mentoring system that is online, so that we can reach people not just in Nairobi. Every Thursday morning, I have committed my life to mentoring entrepreneurs who are willing to come. I do it on Facebook, 8:30. That's why I need to leave, because I'm going to do it. And then I do it every Thursday at 8:30 to 9:30 for free. I give insights and strategies on how to build a thriving business. People ask me questions, people inbox me. And then on top of that, we have a business mentorship program. We're leveraging technology. It's a turnkey system for you to figure out what is your product. It's based a lot around marketing, because that is the key thing. People don't know how to generate leads, because sometimes you think, if I post something on social media and I get 10 likes, I'm good to go. You're not. Likes and leads are very different. A lead is somebody, your phone will ring when you have a lead. When you have a lead, the lead needs to convert into money, into a transaction. So our turnkey mentorship system is to help SMEs to figure out how to generate more leads, how to get conversions, and how to get more transactions, so that they can have money to do the things that they love and enjoy. So one of the things, if I was afraid of, you know, what will people think, I would not have changed the way I do Passion Profit. Every year there's a new change, and people say, Frida, you are always changing. I said, remember the first time we started Facebook? We didn't have Facebook Live. Where Facebook is today, and from the first time I logged into Facebook, it was very different. Another reason why small business owners fail is because we are ignoring social media. Yes, there's this side of social media that takes too much time, but you don't have, again, what is your end in mind? Why are you going on social media, and how is it going to help you? So I say the first thing is mindset. Don't fear failure. Don't fear risking. Don't fear changing, because you're wondering, what will people think if I change again? My end in mind is still the same, helping you turn your passion into profit, so that you can create a life and work that you love and enjoy, and provide meaningful work for yourself and for others. But the way I have done it, I always say, write your vision in ink, but your strategies in pencil. And if you're afraid to write your strategies in pencil, and you're afraid to fail, you can't make it in this place. So every time when I'm interviewed, I'm asked, have you failed? I said, every time. I've been in this space 25 years. I've been in retail. I've been in tours. So you can call that failure, but it's only failure when you stop doing something. As long as you keep going, trying something new based on the end that you want, and generating an income for yourself and your loved ones, and helping others to generate incomes for themselves, you're still on the map, you're still moving on, you're not a failure. So the mindset of how we view failure is the one thing that we have to stay away from, and, you know, and be able to embrace risk more. Have a clear end in mind. Information is great. Mentorship programs are great. Mentors and coaches are great. But if you don't have a clear end in mind, you could align yourself to the wrong person. So when you have a clear end in mind, I'm very clear about who needs to mentor me and who needs to coach me. I have 2 coaches. I have a mentor, and they all, like my mentor right now is a marketing guy in Germany. He has retired, all right? So, because that is what I want to do. Sometimes you find we just look at the next, you know, real big guy, and we're like, please mentor me. And the person asks, why do you want me to mentor you? We are not clear. So if you have your vision, if you have your goals, then I want to start a brewery. Who should mentor me? Tabitha Karanja, definitely. All right. If I want to start a brewery, I'm not going to look for Manu Chandaria. Is Manu Chandaria great? Absolutely. Yeah. I want to start a manufacturing company, I'll go to Manu Chandaria. And then that way I also manage my time. I don't run out for every event. I'll be very specific about which events I go for based on the information I need that will help me get my end in mind, based on the people who have gotten an end in mind similar to mine. So their philosophies will align with mine. And then be open to different kinds of philosophies, be open to different kinds of strategies. I always tell people, and I'm a believer, the Bible says Apollo planted, Paul watered, and God brought the increase. Not one mentor, not one coach, there's no silver bullet, not one program will give you the results. Because entrepreneurs tend to think, if I go to this association, this is where it is happening. No. You need to be at least, I tell people, you need to have at least 3 associations. You need to be part of the chamber. You need to be part of a professional association based with your end in mind. If you're a woman, you need to be in a woman's space, because all the money for women and staff, they're going to look at an organization and not at an individual. So again, there are many things, but those are some that I would leave you with. Mindset for me is key. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. You are not a result of your conditions and your circumstances. You are a result of the choices and decisions you make based on the circumstances and conditions that are around you. Your life will go where your mind
is. A wealth of wisdom. Thank you very much, Frida Winger. We need to let her go. She is a CEO and founder of Passion Profit, and also a business coach. And this conversation will not only be on YouTube, you can also reach out to her if you need her services. But we continue with that conversation. And I think at this point, Jane, I would ask, seeing that you have been at a point where you thought closing would be an option, and you're still on your feet, maybe let's talk about crisis management. How have you been able to push around things to just stay afloat?
No, Gladys, in every situation, an opportunity arises. And what happened about, of course, the delayed payments have actually affected my business, but it gets to a point where you realize you have potential to do other things. Like now, I've ended up becoming an entrepreneurship coach, and I get a lot of opportunities from that. So that has become like another source of income, which is now supplementing my main business. But that said, in any crisis management, and I support what Frida says, there's something called about the mind, how you set your mind to think about the whole situation. And along this phase that I was going through, I came across an article which said entrepreneurship is like visiting a theme park. So you walk into the theme park and you look around, you're like, I don't want to start with the crazy rides, let me start with the simplest ride. The minute you take the simple ride and you're out, you go buy some popcorn, some ice cream, and you're like, why don't I try the next bigger one? So that's what entrepreneurship is all about. We began with small businesses and we thought, wow, that was good. Then as you keep growing, the pressure becomes more. But once in a while, you'll get off the ride and things will become okay again. So I think I was going through that phase of when I'm at the extreme of the ride and I'm wondering, do I really want to continue doing this? Then once I was down again with the popcorn, I realized this is something I want to remain in and I want to keep going at. Because I would also not want anybody to think that after 10 years, it's very easy for you to close down. And maybe it's the wrong terms I used, but at that particular point, it was where you feel you are at a point of almost giving up. But even if you give up, you don't know what you're giving up to. So I would say I'm actually back, looking forward to a brighter and better 100 years or more. And I think things will keep getting better in this country. However, Gladys, I would also want to add one more point. I sit here as the Vice Chair of Gender and Youth at the Kenya Private Sector Alliance. And I would want to avoid this notion where people feel like when you raise an issue of something that is not working in this country, it's assumed that you are a complainer or you're a whiner or you are in the wrong space, which I don't think is the case. I'll give you an example, like when the Ease of Doing Business report was released by the World Bank. We cheered, we were all happy. But I got members who called me and asked me, Jane, the indicators that were used were starting a business, access to credit, registering permits for construction, and paying your taxes. When we look at starting a business, most of the things have improved. As I was saying, you'd visit Sharia House long back. Today, you can either choose to do it in the confines of your house, your office, through the e-citizen portal. You can choose to use a lawyer. You can choose to visit Huduma Center. The options are many. But that said, what kind of business are you starting? Do these indicators favor an SME? Because look at the situation of a border. I was reading a World Bank report where they said border transactions in 2017, 2018 were actually more than the money Safaricom transacted, and it's in the hundreds of billions. So this is an industry we cannot afford to ignore. So when we are talking about starting a business, are we considering that border guy who bought his border? How is it for him to get his driving license? How easy is it for him to get his inspection and all that? I'm a product of my parents having run a matatu business, and I believe it made them money to enable myself and my siblings go to school. Looking at that, back then, whatever it required them to start that business, has it been made easier or has it been made more difficult? Are the bottlenecks more or are they not? Of course, I'm not saying the matatu industry should be allowed to run wild, but can we have a straight system where somebody does not have to bribe to get a registration, bribe to get inspection, bribe to get anything, be stopped by a cop on the road because he needs a bribe, not because there's a problem with your car? Those are some of the things we are talking about. When you look at industries like the cottage industries, I get my members asking me, Jane, starting a business, getting a product, even as passionate as one may be, you could decide you want to go into the dairy products. Manufacture your small yogurt. What is the process before KEBS approves that particular product? What is the cost that goes into you getting that product approved? So as much as we are talking about the general ease of doing business, are we looking at the aspect of the SMEs? The same case to credit, the same case to tax. You're expected to pay your taxes. Are your clients paying you for you to be able to pay those taxes? So those are some of the things I still feel need to be addressed.
Dr. Kamal, when you look at it on a larger scale, I mean, you could talk about borders, but we're talking about some businesses that were on their knees. They were helped by the government, injected capital, try flourish, but it did not work. When it comes to crisis management on that level, what are the factors that should be kept in mind?
Yeah, so as has been said, when the most important thing is when you're starting a business, is there a need for whatever it is that you think that you want to start the business for? In other words, the product, is there a market? And once you've understood that there's a market, and as we heard repeatedly said, you should be prepared to change whenever necessary. But the crisis management comes in when something goes wrong in terms of just the way that you run the business, for example. It could be an internal matter within the business, or it could be something external. It could be that you've exposed yourself in a manner that's not really very, it's too risky. In other words, you're depending perhaps only on one source, like we've said before, government alone, so you need to diversify. It could also be something that's external entirely. It could be, you know, a freak of nature. It could be all kinds of things. So when you're planning your business, you should be trying to guard against all these different things that could happen, that could cause you a problem, that would you know, end up causing some kind of a crisis management. But I think in general that if we have a system, an ecosystem in this country based on not only government, the universities, NGOs, and so on and so forth. Even churches could come into this because there's so many and they're all over the place, and other you know, whether it's mosques or whatever, to come in to try to make available the range of things necessary to coach people to be able to start businesses, because of how important small businesses are to the economy. And because in a situation where, as I said before, 85 to 90% of our workforce is in the informal sector, that's where they're employed. Now that means that business has to be promoted and helped. And so very often Africa is described as the most entrepreneurial continent on earth, but it's not necessarily having the best quality companies because of the lack of all this support that we're talking about. In other words, we need to be able to make sure that whatever people are not doing business just to survive, they're doing business because they want to see it grow and they have a real product that people really need.
Okay, and I think innovation, again, we have to talk about this, and especially technology, and I know you're very passionate about it, Dr. Kamal. And in your space, which is mostly industrial, what are the things that you've seen that have worked? Because it takes a lot of money to actually thrive in that space, but also you need to keep using technology and plan accordingly, because technology keeps changing more often than other factors.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So I mean, what we're in right now globally is the fourth industrial revolution. So about 300 years ago, steam and mechanical power was harnessed, and that was the first industrial revolution. About 100 years later, electricity and mass production came in, and then 100 years later, around 1970s, the digital revolution started. Now, barely 50 years later, we have a merger of all of those. We have a merger of the cyber world, biology, and so on. And so we're finding right now that the pace of change of technology is so fast that you have to keep on top. And our approach as Gearbox, what we do is we provide a space where we put a lot of very modern equipment available to innovators. They don't have to buy that equipment themselves. They can come and use our equipment much as they would a gym. So you pay your membership, and that allows you to come and get trained on how to use the equipment, and then come and book and say, I'm going to be on for this morning, and I'll come and develop whatever it is that I'm looking to do. And our philosophy is that if you want to try and set up a new technology to do something, it could be that you're putting on to, selling to boda owners a device to track the vehicle wherever it may be, or to track the fuel, or whatever it might be. So you need to make a physical device. So you can do that in our space without having to buy all of your own equipment. And then you need to go and test it. So you'll test it on 50 bodas or something like that. And then you have a business case. You look at what happened from the test, you correct what didn't work properly, go back and do it again. So we find people, for example, doing a solar water pump. This is a very cheap way of pumping water, but it's a very big investment at the beginning. But over time, it will be much cheaper than any other method. But so small-scale farmers can't afford those. So the same pay-as-you-go technology has been developed in our space to make it possible for farmers to take this device and to pay every time they pay 100 bob. It means that they can water their garden for 2-3 days, and then it stops. They have to add more money. And after you do that for 2 years, you own the pump. Now, the people who actually are exposed are the ones who are giving that hardware to you. But because you're a farmer, you're not going anywhere. They know that your neighbors know who you are. You won't run away with a pump, and so on and so forth. So it ends up being quite a solid business. And so we're looking to support those sorts of things. So this is where disruption comes through technology, and we're positioning ourselves as trying to create a disruption-proof environment, so that when something new comes and totally takes over something, so that there's a new technology available and everything changes, then there'll be people locally who are able to take advantage of that new technology and run with it. So as a country, we continue to thrive.
Okay, now Jane, as he's talking about how this is important and ideas being churned out, and some of them have become such huge and lucrative businesses, we cannot ignore the conversation around intellectual property. I mean, when it comes to technology and innovation, some people have literally been crippled because that one idea became someone else's and they ran with it, and they don't have anything else to fall back on. The importance of intellectual property in your experience.
I think I would leave it to Dr. Kamau to guide us on that, but I would share my experience and say that it is something that is very important, because just as I earlier stated, my background is in computer science. I studied computer science, and the first business I did when I came back to the country was actually coding. Because just as we've said, and at least this again vindicates me, again, I was not looking for government business only. I used to code for private companies. And what would happen is you do the code, you overnight, and then morning you present what you have, the program, and they look at it, they're like, no, we need adjustments on this. No, I don't think this will work for us. Months later, you walk into the same organization, they're running your program. And you have nothing beyond that to defend yourself. So I looked at that scenario, and back then, intellectual property rights, and I'm sure Dr. Kamau can confirm, was Greek. Nobody even understood what you're talking about when you say you're a coder or you're a programmer. So I think things have changed now, and maybe he would guide on any other graduate on how not to leave the field.
Well, yeah, I'm not an expert in IP, but we do need it for what we do. And so we lean very heavily on Strathmore University, where they have expertise there, and also on Kipi. And both and others are looking to see how they can put information out there to protect such a person. And this is a very common story. And it is very important that people understand before going in whatever contract you're writing, what it actually says. And to the degree that you're able to defend yourself against something like that happening, you need to be advised by experts, by lawyers, and by experts on IP in particular. And the weakness we have right now is that we have a lot of lawyers who are going into intellectual property law, but we don't necessarily have domain experts. What I mean by that is, if I'm going to advise somebody on a biotech innovation, which is quite common in this country. In many of our universities, we're very good at developing new seed variety and so on and so forth, but the universities never benefit. So even institutions have been actually ripped off, if you like, by where their intellectual property is concerned. So in order to write the proper protection for that seed or whatever it might be, you need a person who understands seeds and then how to apply the law to that particular domain. So that's something that I think our ecosystem will develop in time, and we need to be looking at. That's why programs like this are important, because it needs to be a discussion, so that the government then puts whatever resources are available in KIPI to expand what they're able to do, to get more people who are domain experts. They don't have to all be in the employ. You can bring an expert as a contractor for a short period to help to set something up, and with the internet, it should be much easier to get expertise wherever it is, to be able to get the right protection for the individual. But it'll be hubs, platforms like ours. There's at least there's 30-something platforms right now looking at technology in Kenya, and these need to be supported. The government does have, there's a World Bank loan to the Kenya government of about $50 million to promote such hubs to be able to do a better job, and it is this that then eventually will make it possible for people like yourself, when you're trying to get that contract and you got ripped off, to make sure that that doesn't happen, and that whoever it is that did what they did will have to be punished. But I still go back to our culture. Why did that company? Because they knew what they were doing.
It's the easy
way
out.
Exactly
The easy way out.
It's
the easy way out. We're talking about protecting your idea, protecting that thought process. Intellectual property is a conversation we need to have on the side, as we shall work on having the same right here on AM Live. Now, as I let you go, Jane, you have been there 10 years, on your knees, back up, still going. Your parting shot to SME owners.
My parting shot to SME owners is I'll tell them they have to observe the 5 characteristics of an entrepreneur, which have personally helped me get to the point I am at. And the first one I would say is passion. So many times you meet people, they'll discuss their outfits, they'll discuss anything apart from saying what they do. So if you're passionate about your business, I don't see what stops you from talking about it. Number 2, they have to be persistent. Reason being, there are days. If I would say my days are always good, that would be the biggest lie. But every day wake up hoping for a better day tomorrow and keep persisting and not giving up. Then the third thing is be a risk taker, because you are never sure of the outcome unless you try. So I would strongly advocate for being a risk taker. The other thing is they have to be keen learners and keen listeners. Like now I'll tell you, in the midst of this difficult season, it's people who kept telling me, Jane, why don't you do speaking engagements on entrepreneurship? You have the experience, you have all that. And all of a sudden it hit me. So now I get invitations by churches, institutions, and all that. So people will tell you, I love the way you dress. Can't you be a stylist? So God speaks through people, and I think those are ideas we need to pick up. The last one I would say is functional humility. And by functional humility, I believe, Frida had spoken a bit about it, you don't have to have the corner office for you to declare yourself an entrepreneur. Start small and gradually grow. Because I think that's what has affected our social practices, because everybody just wants to get rich overnight. And as we all know, if we don't transform our socially, let's not expect ourselves to transform economically. Thank you.
Very well said. Well, thank you so much for your time. That was Jane Kagiri. She actually is the CEO and founder of Creative Ed Solutions, and we celebrate her for winning the 2018 Young Entrepreneur Award. There is hope at the end of the tunnel for entrepreneurs out there. And of course, Dr. Kamau Gashigi, he is Executive Director of Gearbox. It's a non-profit organization, but you're doing a great job in giving life to many, many ideas and innovators out there. And earlier on, Frida Owinga, CEO, founder of Passion Profit, who had to leave, but a wealth of wisdom coming from this discussion, even as we looked at the SMEs environment in Kenya. This is AM Live. Remember, we are in the market, but even as we end, before I'll let you go, enjoy your Thursday. Let's talk about Thanksgiving, and it is a special holiday for Americans. It's coming up, and actually this is the week for Thanksgiving, and it is a day when Americans step back from the rush of daily life to be with family and friends, to reflect on their blessings and to give thanks. Now, it doesn't have to be an American thing, because we all have something that we can be grateful for. Now, as you can see right next to me is what most of us would call a big ingoho, but to be very specific, this is a turkey, a gift from the American Embassy. It has been sent to us by His Excellency the Ambassador Robert Godek, and it says, on this Thanksgiving, my wife Laurie and I are reflecting on our 6 extraordinary years in this beautiful country, Kenya. We have so much to be grateful for, starting with all of the generous, hardworking, energetic, and creative Kenyans we have met. Now, Kenya is is a special place, and we have been thankful every day for the opportunity to live and work in this great country. On this Thanksgiving, we are grateful as well for our ever deeper partnership and our shared commitment to building better lives for Kenyans and Americans. Happy Thanksgiving from the ambassador, the U.S. ambassador to Kenya, that is Robert Godek. Well, time to enjoy a meal. It is a huge one, and I think at this point I'll ask my guests to help carve the turkey, and of course the crew to come in. We enjoy this scrumptious meal. This is gonna be quite a task, I must say, so we need your muscle, Daktari. We need your muscle. Jane, I think you can help us unwrap the same.
How much are you paying?
Well, I provided the meal. The services should come for free. Now that we're speaking about businesses, we can negotiate. All right, the honors to you. The team can come out. Let's enjoy some breakfast in the form of a turkey. Well, happy Thanksgiving. Thank you for keeping us company on AM Live. My name is Gladys Gachanja. We have been in the market. We shall see you tomorrow morning. Olive Barrows will be carrying on with you on the Leadership Forum segment. Have a good day. My name is Gladys Gachanja.